friend of mine, he was looking for this entrepreneurial thing to do, come out of investment banking. It's like, I've seen like the early kind of success that you've had with SaaStock. I've got this great idea for a conference, around
investment bankers.
I don't know. It was like robo advising or something like that. And I had no idea, what it was. And I said to him, look, I think what you need to do is you've got to do some of the groundwork, right? You need to write some sort of content, whether it do a podcast or, do some meetups. But he just wanted to just cut all of that out and go straight for the conference. And in the end, he just realized that just wasn't really viable. So I think if you can build an audience first, then that's the kind of the best platform to really do that and move into the conference business.
Ignition sequence start. 3, 2, 1.
Alex Theuma. What's up, dude?
Dan.
Dude, I'm pumped to have you on here, man. You run one of the best SaaS events in the world, and you're not paying me to say that.
Oh, thanks, Dan. No, I'm definitely not.
Yeah. And international, we were just talking about the fact that you've done them, LATAM, Asia. Yeah. We're in San Francisco right now.
Yeah, we did one in New York in summer. Yeah, we got Australia at the end of the year.
Whoa, that's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Dude, talking about jet lag from here.
Yeah, couple of days. Last year I flew to Australia because we did it last year, December. I was there for 4 days and it was brutal afterwards when I go back to the UK. But somebody actually flew, Thomas Smale from FE International flew for just 24 hours from Boston to Sydney and then back.
What a hustler.
It's like,
straight up hustle.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, don't do that. I actually went to Australia once and I met a guy. I was there backpacking when I was like 23 and the guy's like, yeah, I flew here for a week. I'm like, dude, if you come for a week, you might as well stay a while. It's far. It's literally the opposite side of the world. Yeah. How many people go to your, this year, how many people would you have had at your event?
In total, it should be around sort of 6,000 plus.
Jeez, that's so cool.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. Obviously, seeing where we've come from in the last few years. The first SaaStock, we had just under 700 people there.
Really, that was first, and
the first one. Yeah,
it's what 3-4 years.
2016, that was. Yeah.
Okay.
And that was global from day one. I thought it was just going to be a European SaaS conference.
And was that in Dublin?
That was in Dublin. Okay. Yeah, and people bought tickets from Brazil, from Australia. They flew in, and it just kind of showed the need that people really kind of wanted to come and learn and hang with their peers and bring everyone together. And we just did that. We just brought all the SaaS founders together, and now this year with 6 conferences, it'll be 6,000 plus. So the big one is the one in Dublin, which you'll be speaking at again this year,
so good.
October 14th to 16th. So I'll have about 4,000 this year. So last year was just under 3,000, 4,000 this year, more than 50 countries coming. So it's great to see how international SaaS is and folks coming in from Mexico, Colombia, Singapore, Seoul, etc. It's really cool.
What's changed from a content point of view? What do you feel like the market's in the 3 years ago? Content topics versus today.
Yeah, I would say 3 years ago, and that's such a short space of time, right?
It's nothing. Yeah, the fact that you've created that in 3 years is awesome. Yeah.
And what I saw 3 years ago when we was kind of starting out, there was this whole thing. Okay, there's SaaS in Europe, great European SaaS companies, and as soon as you get to 1 million in ARR or Series A, you need to move to San Francisco and do the Silicon Valley playbook, right? And that's what everybody was kind of talking about. That's what I was reading.
Yeah.
And a lot of the European companies were doing that. And I think now in such a short space of time, probably because of technologies like Slack and Zoom and some others, it's enabled actually obviously great companies to do remote work. It's enabled I think European companies to actually say, well, we can have better communication with VCs in the US or whatever. But I've seen so many companies that are just staying.
And there's an advantage to have that if you can get your cost structure a lot cheaper.
Exactly.
It's not cheap in San Francisco.
It's not cheap. People are getting their engineers in Buenos Aires or wherever, right? And so now we're just seeing that this Silicon Valley playbook, you have to move to the US, is now not necessarily the hottest topic or that we were seeing 3 years ago.
And that was on the content schedule, how to move to San Francisco or the Silicon Valley.
That's what the VCs were talking about specifically, and also a lot of the founders. That's the journey that they were in at that stage. It's get to a certain scale, you have to move to the US to kind of crack it. And now people are saying you don't have to, right? So
is there more content around managing remote teams and distributed teams?
We're doing a lot of content on remote stuff sort of this year.
For sure, man.
Because again,
Slack, Zoom.
Yeah.
These tools have just transformed the way people are.
Yeah, and you got companies like Envision App, right? What are they? I mean, they're obviously the unicorn, like probably 1,000 people, like remote first company, and Ryan Burke actually from Envision, he's like SVP of sales, or building up their international kind of business. And when I first kind of met him and actually had him on my podcast, the SaaS Revolution show, he was saying, yeah, we're like 400 people and we're all remote, and I was like, really? How does that work? And he kind of explained how that worked. And now actually, and again, he was actually saying that, VCs at the time were like, a lot of them, they wouldn't back like remote companies and saying, you have to have.
It's true. There was you
have to have an office, and they're all now coming, round to the fact that
you got GitHub, you've got the automatics, you've got so many examples of companies that, and again, just because it's more cost effective. Yeah. You've grown a lot. So you've built your team. Is everybody distributed?
No, everybody. Initially we were remote, but it's because when we were only 3 people, we didn't have an office. So, but now we're 22 people. We're almost all in the London office.
Cool.
We do have somebody in Portugal, and we have a contractor in the US, and one in Asia as well. But apart from that, everybody's in the London office. And as we're saying, like costs of having an office in London are
real money.
It's real money, and I'm sometimes thinking, well, we should be remote as well, perhaps.
Yeah, but everybody stay at home.
Yeah.
Fun fact, the individual, who is the most popular YouTube SaaStock talk ever given?
Isn't that Patrick Campbell?
It is, yeah. That's his favorite thing to tell me.
Yeah.
But it's like, guess who has the most popular talk ever? So I had Patrick on the show. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to beat him just by running Google YouTube ads. But
yeah, I don't know how he's done it. There's some sort of viral thing going on there.
What he's doing. He's got an email list.
It's like 20, 30,000 views right now. And the other ones are like the good ones are like 1,000 or 2,000.
He's just so data driven. It's good content. Yeah. Who are you excited for this year?
First of all, I'm like, obviously just can't wait for the conference itself. I've been like pumped for it for, the last few months. But this year, it's great to see speakers like Girish Mathrubootham, who's the CEO of Freshworks.
Okay.
So they're like competitor to Zendesk.
Yeah.
But they're a unicorn. And again, he's based in, I think, Chennai or somewhere in India. So he's built this unicorn. Whilst they are international, being remaining in the HQ in India, we actually had him booked in 2017 before they had reached kind of unicorn status, and he had a bad back, so he couldn't come. So this year, he's coming back. But again, it's nice to just not have like either US or European, kind of well-known founders. I mean, I think he's pretty well known within the industry, but SaaStock is a very global conference. We're trying to have that. The representation of the audience, also on stage as well. So we have people like Girish coming in from India, with people like Eric Santos from RD Station, which is like a big SaaS company in Brazil. So I think they've also just reached unicorn status sort of recently as well with their latest round of funding. Claire Hughes Johnson coming over from Stripe. Rory O'Driscoll from Scale Venture Partners. He's a great character. So he'll be, very excited to see.
How do you recruit your speakers?
Used to be me. And it used to be my kind of wish list, and I'd love doing it. It's like I've often say
it's kind of probably why you created the event.
Yeah. Exactly. But it's like the developer CEO that gives up coding because they have to. Like I was the CEO that had to kind of give up recruiting speakers, which is kind of our product, a big part of our product. But I love doing that. And he's like, here's my wish list, and then reaching out to them, and Des Trainers agreed, and Christoph Jans has agreed, and you kind of had that knock-on effect. So, if you get a few good speakers, then they see who else is speaking. They're like, okay, well, if Des Trainer's speaking, then that's going to be good enough for me. So I did that for the first couple of years. And then I got some external help. I wasn't naive enough to think that having never run a SaaS business, and I'm not a VC either, I'm not in the trenches. So I don't know 100%, how tough it is to run a SaaS business or actually, everything about sales, marketing, customer success. So I got some experts in with a steering committee, a couple of people, a couple of VCs, a couple of operators as well, and then they would look at the agenda that I was putting together and give advice, and we pulled that together. Then I just found, obviously, the more tasks. I was also doing sales. I'm doing marketing and everything else, and the agenda was just kind of one of those things where I'd do a little sprint in January. And I'd maybe get like 20, 30 speakers confirmed, and I'd do nothing on it for the next few months.
So once you got those, you feel like I've got a base.
I've got a base,
the rest later. Because the event's in November?
It's in October. Yeah. So I'd do a sprint in January, and by February, I'd have like 30 speakers confirmed and maybe put like 20 up there and then add a few in kind of afterwards. But then, I just found like then we'd have maybe May was the kind of point where we wanted to do the first draft of the agenda and, put that kind of live and like show people, what's happening, because people like seeing who's speaking, but they also want to know, a lot of people like, what are they going to learn about, right? What are the particular specific topics that
the tracks.
And I was just becoming a bottleneck in that. I was like, I've got so much to do. I wouldn't give it as much time as it deserved. And then I just thought, like, when we got into year 3 or after year 2 into year 3, so I need, somebody kind of professional to do this. And that's when I got introduced to Emma Pierce, who's she's now our VP.
Amazing.
Yeah, she's great.
She's so good. She's like, Dan, who else can I get? And I'm like, okay,
Yeah, so she's great. And when I met her before we hired her, and she just explained everything.
She did it where? Money
2020. Yeah, which is like, the biggest fintech sort of conference globally. And she explained the whole process, and I was just like, I don't do any of this.
Yeah, you're like, wow, that's how it's supposed to look.
This is what the professionals do. Let's do that. And again, it was like she hadn't worked in SaaS before, but she'd been running content for a fintech conference, and like she was super smart. And I was like, I'm pretty confident that was the only weakness. So I was pretty confident, what, she's going to get this. And she's just picked it up. Like, she's on the phone every day speaking to loads of founders and VCs, and she's learning like, more than I can learn. Yeah. So that's great. So that's been a big help. It's like one of those, over the years, the number of tasks or duties like that I've delegated to somebody else. In terms of, I was doing the sales, I was leading marketing. I was doing the content, but now I leading and driving those. Now I'm actually probably more comfortable now saying I am a CEO. I'm looking at the whole company, at the dashboard, at the numbers. Whereas the first couple of years, you're a founder. You're doing it all. When I wasn't comfortable with the term CEO, back then, but I'm kind of growing into it a little bit.
What have you learned? I mean, what's interesting about events is back in the day, I think my first tech event was like Future Web Apps.
Okay. Yeah.
Like Ryan Carson. And it was interesting watching their, build something small into big. Like, what was the motivation for you to start SaaStock?
Yeah, motivation. I mean, I've always been entrepreneurial.
Was that your first event ever in your whole life?
2016? Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't organize dinners or?
I mean, okay, so I did some meetups, but as part of the kind of run up to SaaStock.
Okay.
But I'd never, I think for one company when I was a sales guy, we organized a small event for like 50 of our customers or something like that.
Like steak dinner.
Yeah, and then we did some like virtual golf afterwards and things like that. But I had done that, but that was it. So I didn't count myself as having experience in events and conferences. And actually that was when I kind of stumbled into SaaStock because I was doing this SaaS blog. I was doing the podcast to then supplement the blog. This is back in 2015. Mm-hmm. What I had then was the drive to actually, I didn't want to be a sales guy all of my career, right? And I wanted to do something entrepreneurial. So I just started experimenting, doing some things on the side. Like, okay, I've never done a blog before. Let's do a blog around SaaS.
And that's SaaScribe.
And that's SaaScribe. And and then like I soon supplemented that with the podcast. And I think just again, like the timing, like the podcast, it was pretty much the first sort of B2B SaaS podcast back then in 2015. I remember Aaron Levy was doing founder calls and he had like Mikkel Svenne and, Jeff Lawson from Twilio on, but I think he sort of realized running a public company and doing a podcast it was a lot of his time. So he only did a couple of episodes, and that, freed up the market for me for a short space of time. And so had some great guests on it. And had a podcast with no audience, and my first guest was Mark Roberge, right? And it's like I don't think he actually asked the question like how many listeners. He had his book out, so that was why I kind of reached out to him. I was like, "You got your book out? You want to be a guest on my show?" He was like, "Yeah." And actually, for 2 years,
he didn't ask how many subscribers.
but for 2 years, that was the most listened to episode
sure,
because people just knew who he was, and that kind of gave us that boost, that spike, because we were getting people like Mark Roberge, Owen McCabe, Byron Dieter, etc. were coming on, and and I was just doing this in my bedroom.
Anchor interviewer, that anchor speaker. Once you got them,
exactly. So then I could reference them, and so I was doing the blog, the podcast, started doing SaaS meetups because nobody else was doing them at the time
in the UK.
In the UK, and then I did a couple in the UK. Like 120 people came to the first one. It was a really good community. Like people like Hannah Chaplin from Receptive, which got acquired by Pendo, and so a lot of people that came to that first one, still like I'm now like friends with, or they come to SaaStock, or they're SaaStock local city leaders. And I did some in Dublin, did some in Berlin, and then I was like, this is great, but I'm trying to get this community together. And there isn't a community like that's being pulled together in Berlin, but there's enough, entrepreneurs there. And there wasn't really a SaaS community in Dublin, and there wasn't really a SaaS community in London. So I'm doing it all. I was like, but it doesn't really scale. So it's pretty difficult to keep doing these meetups, even doing like a couple a month. And then everybody that I met though, this was all the great customer development sort of work where they were saying, look, why don't you do a conference, in Europe, we bring everybody together. You're the person to do it because you're taking the initiative. And I was like, well, yeah, I really like the idea, and I'm looking for. I was really kind of. I wanted to do it, right? But then I was, well, I don't have a experience in conferences or events. So eventually, I kind of thought, well, do you know what? So many people are asking for this. Surely it can't be rocket science if I get the right people around me. And that was kind of the plan. And it was much harder than I expected. Yeah.
And was that first event 2 days, 3 days? What was the
first one? Was it turned into 3 days, but it was the SaaS City workshop. Yep. So had that concept from the beginning. In fact, it was just three workshops the first year. And then in SaaStock, was just a 1 day, 1 day, 2 track. I remember I booked like David Cancel. He came over and he spoke, but because he confirmed really late, he spoke on the second stage, like right at the end, and he was like, "Oh, you put me in the small room, the small room." But I was like, "Well, if you confirm right at the end, I did ask you, for a whole year." Yeah. But he was fine with that. And then we had SaaS Society, the first iteration of it.
You had that all year one.
Yeah, had that all year one.
Pretty crazy vision.
Yeah.
Those are all still pillars.
Yeah, exactly. And so so we had that, and we've kind of they've evolved, but that was kind of the idea from the beginning. It was like, well, how do we really cater for everybody and differentiate stages, ourselves, and so had that from the beginning, and those are all part of the SaaStock experience, really.
What would you say to somebody that's trying to kind of build a network and use events as a way to do it? Like, what's the lightest first step? Like, what would you tell them to do if somebody's like, hey, obviously I don't want to do a SaaStock. Yeah. Like, I just want to, because you always hear like, hey, build a platform, maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's, so I love the live. We're more extroverted. Yeah. We like talking to people face to face. What's the easiest form of that?
Yeah, I think you've got to put in the groundwork, right? So you've got to build this audience, and I'd sort of done that inadvertently without thinking about the conference. I was doing audience and community building, through
the content initially,
through the content, the podcast. Like I had a Slack channel for SaaS founders, so they had about 500 founders on that, sort of back in the day. and then doing the meetups, right?
So it could be like a Facebook group, could be whatever.
Exactly. Yeah. So you've got to build that audience, right? And I remember like a friend of mine, he was looking for this entrepreneurial thing to do, come out of investment banking. It's like, I've seen like the early kind of success that you've had with SaaStock. I've got this great idea for a conference, around
investment bankers.
I don't know. It was like robo advising or something like that, and I had no idea what it was. And I said to him, look, I think what you need to do is you've got to do some of the groundwork, right? You need to write some sort of content, whether it do a podcast or do some meetups. But he just wanted to just cut all of that out and go straight for the conference. And in the end, he just realized that just wasn't really viable. So I think if you can build an audience first, then that's the kind of the best platform to really do that and move into the conference business. And you can see, I think, like a lot of people, who followed that path, they've got some good conferences behind them. I read a book by, I think it's Joe Paluzzi. It's Content Inc. That's what he did. He just built this audience and then had this conference, and then it got acquired for like 17 million or something like that.
Damn. Yeah. Is that your trajectory? Like, is that what you want to do at SaaStock? What's the?
Yeah, no, I mean, like we're sort of at this. I feel like there's this massive opportunity that we're real like early. We're still quite early in SaaS, even though you've had Salesforce around for 20 years or whatever it is, right? So
super early.
It's just like almost every startup and almost every company is now, becoming like SaaSified and becoming a SaaS company.
Subscription.
So like each year there are just like thousands and thousands and thousands more SaaS companies, and they're all like, keen, hungry to learn. And that's why like, tomorrow we've got, 500 here at SaaStock West Coast. So I think like we've been riding this wave, with SaaStock, as you see the trajectory from 700 to 6,000 across the globe this year, and I think that's just going to continue to go like that. So from the conference point of view, we're just at a really good, I think, point in time where we launched, very early to market, in respect that there wasn't, a SaaS conference in Europe, at the time. In fact, there were only, 2 in the world, at the time. Now it's actually good to see there's a SaaS conference that's happening in Prague tomorrow. There's one that's happening in Paris tomorrow. We have ours in Dublin, there's conferences in the US, et cetera, all over. So the actual ecosystem, is really growing. So from a conference perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. Then there's, discussions that we kind of have internally about the network that we have and the business that we have, and supplementing that with, perhaps sort of different products, whether it's accelerators or funds or this sort of thing, right? So these are all very interesting. And what we said sort of right now is that we just need to kind of focus on the conference business and just ensure that we're like a well-oiled machine.
You know how to do it, yeah.
And once we're, and again, like, we're into year 4, we probably should be a well-oiled machine, and we're getting there, but it's just each year it's changed. And now as we've got 6 conferences, it means that you need to be super good at, having internal processes and just being able to kind of, run all of these kind of, at a similar time from a marketing perspective and sales perspective. So once we've got that kind of down, then I think you can say, okay, well, let's look at, what is the next thing. We did launch SaaStock Local this year, which is that? Effectively similar, easy way to kind of describe it, like a bit like startup grind type model.
Okay.
So
local chapters kind of
local chapters. Yeah. So actually looking at the grassroots where we came from, and the SaaS meetups, which kind of stopped after I went, full time on SaaStock, because that was where the revenue was. And I probably did a couple of meetups after the first SaaStock, but then we just focused on the main conference. But actually, the important thing is that you should continue, I think, to do the community building and the grassroots stuff. And so we'd left that for a bit, and then we realized, I think one year, we realized, we've got this big conference in Dublin, and between conferences, whether it was 2017 to 2018, we actually hadn't done anything in the community in Ireland, in Dublin, in that year. Wow. And we're like, we probably should have, right? Yeah. And So now, anyway, with SaaStock Local, we have the I think the ability to do this at scale. We've got the resources. Gabriel's like behind behind this and able to kind of recruit and support local kind of city leaders and empower that. And I think we've got about 20 at the moment. We had like 10 happening this month alone in Helsinki, Tel Aviv, Amsterdam. We've got London, Brussels, so it's really great to see. And again, it's showing that there is such this hunger and demand, and we're getting about like close to 100 people per event.
No way.
Yeah.
Showing up.
Yeah. So
there's a hunger for it.
Yeah, exactly. And so like, what if we can have 150 chapters, where
going on all the time.
All the time. So it would be pretty powerful thing.
How do you mess things up as an event organizer?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Because I mean, you've seen all these events come and go. Like when you talk to the team about like, hey, there's these certain things we need to get right because this is.
How do you mess things up?
What do you think are the
multiple ways. I mean, like the first year, for instance, like we almost ran out of money a number of times, right? And again, I think a large part was inexperience, and we had a 12-month kind of. It was 12 months between launching the website and signing our first sponsor. And starting the speaker recruitment till the actual conference, right? So September 2015 to September 2016. So managing the cash flow, it's like, okay, I can put $1,000 or €1,000 deposit down, and then get a sponsor in for like 15 grand or whatever, and then you have like a bad month, and you're like, okay, then what do I do now? So there were a lot of times where I was like, we're just about to kind of run out of money. No, got a deal in, we're fine. Yeah, and then carrying on. And again, that extends outside of the events business, right? Just cash flow in year one for many startups. There were a lot of costs because of my experience that I didn't know. I bought into a lot of things because I wanted our event. When you're this founder and you want your event to be the best and look the best, and you've got all these great ideas. Sometimes I think I got a little bit carried away, and maybe even
expenses. You mean?
Just like probably didn't have to spend as much on the staging as I did. I would think I like the I have a lot of respect for the partners that we work with, but perhaps sometimes they necessarily didn't view me as here is a solo entrepreneur in the first year of business that probably doesn't have as deep pockets as Facebook, but we'll still try and sell them an expensive solution, and often they go, here's an expensive solution.
It's awesome.
It's also look at this shit thing here. You could also have that.
You can do that too. But
I want this. Yeah. And so I bought a lot of stuff, right? And
bought as in like bought their solution, or actually bought physical things to think about next.
Yeah,
event.
we bought so the like the booths that we have, and I think you've seen the booths that we have at SaaStock, and I'm still probably making the same mistake. But they're like handmade, kind of like wooden booths, and they cost like several thousand, right, each. And then we put them in storage.
Yeah, totally.
And you can have a much kind of cheaper, cost-effective offering that is similar kind of size, but it doesn't look necessarily like as good. Yeah. But I think ultimately, had I had somebody experienced like with me, they would have advised and said,
middle ground.
You don't need to spend that much there. You don't need to spend this much here. Like, it's
we
the first
can rent
year.
that stuff.
Yeah. And that would have been the difference between, profit and loss, right?
Yeah.
And we did actually make a loss, in the first year. Yeah. Which again is pretty typical, but it's like,
totally. The events business is not known as like crazy profitable.
The thing is to get it to
the point where
it can be, you need to be at scale, right?
So you lose money year one. There's already cash flow issues, and then you go at it again.
Yeah.
How are you funding it?
I was all self-funded for the first year. Self-funded and obviously like driven by revenue, right? So ticket sales, sponsorship. Obviously, I had 11-year sales career, so knew how to sell. Although selling enterprise software platforms and then selling sponsorship was actually it's a little bit different, but still, we did fairly well. I think the first year we had about like 25 partners.
That's a lot.
We did, but it was like 100 grand.
Some people don't even know they should have sponsors. So they're like, I'll just sell tickets and I'll make a bunch of money. It's like,
no, you won't. No, so we did I think we did 25 partners, and then we sold out of the 700 attendees, like we sold about 500 tickets for the event. So that went kind of pretty well. Second year, then I took the partnerships from 25 to 55. And then it was kind of at that point where I was like, well, if I can do this and 2 days of the week when I'm not fully on the sales, maybe this is the time to hire in a full-time salesperson. But back to your point in terms of like,
how do you break
how do you survive? So we'd lost money on the event, but then you kind of have like payment terms. So I had paid for the majority of the events throughout the year and like before the conference. Then there was some money kind of like owing after the conference. I was like, okay, well, how, like, I owe this money. We don't have this money. It was a bit of a stressful
discussion,
a bit of a stressful kind of moment in time. But effectively, I didn't take any time off. I did like $100,000 worth of like renewals within a couple of days with like a lot of the happy partners.
Yeah.
Which then
get their cash in.
Got their cash in, and then just continued just selling. Was
there a pushback from early partners on first year events? Like,
yes,
I'm assuming they've been burned. Were they like,
yeah. So like, I mean, two examples. One where no pushback, and thank God, because again, I think through because of SaaScribe. So the story like with Nick Franklin from Chart Mogul. I started SaaScribe in February 2015. I reached out to him in February 2015 for an interview, like Q&A, just over email. Initially, he pushed back on that, but then he did it because his business is, a dashboard for SaaS companies. And so we did an interview with him, and then like a few months later, he actually then started doing some like display ads on SaaScribe, which, our traffic was kind of, it was very focused, but it wasn't huge, but actually, did provide some ROI, but we realized, advertising wasn't the model. And then I bumped into him again he came to like the Berlin SaaS meetup, and then I saw him at Web Summit. I said, Nick, I'm going to do this conference. And he said, well, if you do, I'll sponsor it. And then a few weeks later, I was like, Nick, I've got the websites already, I've got the venue. And he wrote the first check, right, to be our gold partner, and this was money up front, 12 months ahead of a conference for a first-time event.
Wow.
Right, and somebody with no experience, and he's VC backed, and so he's taking a big risk here. But so he said he did it because he kind of he bought into me. He believed that I would do it, right? And obviously, people like Nick as well, like, and a lot of people that attended SaaStock, they wanted to see something like this succeed. They needed it, for the ecosystem, for their businesses. So they've got to be involved if they want something like that, right? In the ecosystem. So Nick was a early evangelist, took a risk. And again, maybe because he was a seed stage SaaS business, it was easier for him to take that risk.
Yeah.
But then we had partners like Salesforce wouldn't partner with us in the first year. Intercom wouldn't partner, with the first year,
which is
event.
Fair.
Which is fair. It's absolutely fair.
It's like, you guys are smart.
It's smart. Yeah. But yeah, so they missed out. But the ones that
it would have been cheaper.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But Nick has a great deal for life. But yeah, like a lot of those partners that did partner with us in the first year, and I say there was like 24 of them. Loved it, and most of them are still with us. Today, kind of. So the Chart Mogul have been with us for 4 years. Profitwell have been with us for 4 years. ChargeBee, Gainsight, etc. They're all kind of renewing with us, and then obviously now we're 4 years in. We're seeing like average revenue per partner is increasing year over year, like substantially. We're having accounts that spent 10 grand with us now spend 50 grand with us, and this kind of growth.
Can you oversell sponsors? Like when do you like set a limit, or do you just like, if you want to give me money, we'll add your logo? Like, is there?
Yeah, no. What they want is brand awareness and lead generation, right?
Yeah.
It's very kind of simple, and within that, they need a good audience, so you have to deliver that audience. They don't really like. I think if you look at actually our partner deck, sort of last year, there's probably like way too many things in there, which were like a lot of that they get. Yeah. That is probably they don't even want, right? Yeah. And we can probably strip a lot of that out and simplify it. But yeah, like I guess for each year, the more people that you can bring to them, the happier they are, right? And
do they ever ask for unique things that you're like, I don't know if we do that?
Yeah. Some people do, some people don't. Like Patrick Campbell will just come and do stuff and then apologize for it afterwards. And I'm like, okay. But again, maybe it would be crazy if everybody did that. But I quite like the fact that he's got a plan and he does stuff. So for instance, I think he did it on the first year and he kind of continues to do it. Like he just emailed everybody, that's at the conference, says, hey, look, I'm doing a talk on pricing at my booth sort of right now. And then I see this, big crowd around their booth and what's on. And he's like, oh,
whoever's on stage.
And I see the email from him. And then he's like, yeah, I meant to ask you, but I'm just going to say sorry now or whatever. But yeah, so yeah, that's pretty cool. We always get like, we tailor stuff a little bit. So we've got the off the shelf, type offerings, but everybody kind of wants something sort of unique. So we've done like breakfasts and some special like events and stuff like that. We've never had a car sponsor yet, but we had a big German, car manufacturer or come to us kind of this year and they're saying, look, we're interested. We want to get 300 CEOs, in a room with the car, like, is the sensor kind of stage and how much would that cost? And so we filled out all the details, gave them like a tailored proposal.
And would they like car sponsor like Uber and stuff for like drivers or just be like, let us pitch?
Yeah, no, I think they just exposure for their brand. Okay. Yeah. So they just want to get in front of like, CEOs and stuff. And so like, here's our car. And it didn't go anywhere. But but they car manufacturers do sponsor, big tech events, right? Yeah. And we're kind of getting to that stage where we're getting on to a kind of biggish event. We've got a lot of C-level attendees there, right? So they want to do that and get in front of them. But mostly we have SaaS companies that want to sell to other SaaS companies that are our sponsors.
What are some weird moments from the events? Like, has anybody ever done something super schemy? Had to kick them out of the event? People trying to sneak into the green room?
No, I don't know. Do they?
I don't know. Some great muffins, dude. Yeah. The muffins from last year were so good.
Yeah, no. I mean, probably. I mean, I've snuck into a few green rooms in my
that's where the party's
in my
at.
time. Yeah. No, I mean, generally, I think everybody that comes to SaaStock is pretty well behaved as far as I can see. I mean.
There are after parties.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of hangovers, right? For instance,
that's why it's called SaaStock.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, being in Ireland, being in Dublin, I think it's such a magical city, right? And because it's so much smaller, let's say in London, where I'm from, and New York and San Francisco, you bump into people like in the morning when they're jogging in the park, obviously see everybody at the conference, and then in the evening you're bumping into them in the streets and again in the pubs and at dinner, and it's like at midnight you're coming out of a restaurant and there's David Darman and there's all these other people like
stage,
and it's great, right? So it kind of feels like everybody's here, right? And
because some event speakers come and then they leave, and that's not as fun. That's what I loved about SaaStock is like people are there to be at the event, to experience the city, to connect with people. And that I think you've pulled off really well. I just find like what moments have happened that like you didn't expect that you had to deal with. I mean, obviously you've got 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people showing up. Like you're essentially responsible for these people. Nothing.
I don't think anything too crazy. I mean, I
feel like I'm going to jinx the next one. I'm sorry, man.
No, I did. I mean, every year I always say that I'm gonna behave, right? And in terms of it's really exhausting doing a whole week of events. I mean, because from Monday right to SaaS Society, which finishes on the Friday. right? So obviously not everybody is there for the full week, but certainly, I am. And therefore,
it's
it is a marathon. But we have 2 speaker dinners on the Monday and Tuesday. Yeah. And as soon as you get into the speaker dinner...
That's true. You run 2 separate...
2 speaker dinners.
There's
150 speakers this year.
You have to do 2 different...
It's over 2 dinners. And as soon as you go into the speaker's dinner, you get in and somebody hands you a glass of Prosecco. And I'm like, okay, it's been a long day. I'll have one. And then they're constantly, filling it up.
And you're seeing the next morning.
Well, so this is it. Last year I took 3 speakers out until about 3 in the morning. And one of them rocked up the next day. I mean, I got on stage to do the second day opening remarks. My mouth was pretty dry. We had Yakov from Leadfeeder. I'm sure he doesn't mind me mentioning his name. He was just young, big Finnish guy who was absolutely fine. Yeah. I was like, oh my God, how are you? Fine. And then we had Jack who from Sift who was speaking, and he came in with his sunglasses. And it was like, I feel absolutely terrible. And he's got to go on stage, and he nearly puked on stage. And so so we have had that. So that's very irresponsible of me to take speakers out and be entertainment until 3 in the morning. But so I'll try and not do that, I think.
So it's more self-restraint than any of the attendees.
I think so. Yeah.
Who have you wanted as speakers that are still on your wish list?
Wanted as speakers, I mean, Mark Benioff would always be great, right? But I think he doesn't do a whole ton of third-party events, and when he does Dreamforce. And
what would you want him to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question, right? Obviously, a lot of our attendees are pretty early stage, right? And so we don't all of the content at SaaStock is very practical, actionable. It's it's super focused stuff. So we probably have a bit of sort of leeway if we got somebody like Mark Benioff to do something a bit more kind of higher level, a bit more inspirational type stuff, which we don't usually take on board. But I mean, for instance, he's got he's not speaking this year, but he's got a book out which launches during SaaStock this year. So it'd be great timing
Mark,
to kind of launch
to be there.
Yeah, Mark Roberge came on my podcast, but Mark Benioff, when it comes to the conference. Exactly. But yeah, people like Aaron Levy, he
is the funniest dude.
Yeah, man. Exactly. He's great on social media, probably great in person. Apparently he only comes to Europe in spring and the conference is in October and I'm not moving it. So that's a tough one.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a whole bunch, right? That we do try, and we've had some speakers where I've confirmed them, and they've had to kind of pull out, but almost twice they've done it or whatever.
So it's kind of
but yeah, I've got a huge wish list of people that just that we've never had, even this year actually, because I you've got the big names, Mark Benioff, Aaron Levy, but I like to get some of the unheralded names.
Yeah.
And also some of the
known mainstream, but what they've created is really special.
Yeah. And maybe they're kind of the next big thing. So for instance, we
rising stars.
Yeah. We tried with the founders of Notion, and they're super focused right now, and they're no distractions. We're not going to come and speak at conferences, and that's great. Maybe Airtable. These sort of type.
I just migrated Airtable. It's pretty good.
Yeah, we've not done that yet.
I held off, man. Yeah. I fought it because I was like, I don't like tools just for the sake of tools, but it was compelling.
Okay, I have to look into that. But yeah, so these exciting products, they're going to be the next unicorn. So it's nice to actually get them in when they're just that little step ahead of there's a lot of buzz.
Yeah,
there's a lot of buzz around those type of things.
The rising stars.
Yeah. But again, even the rising stars, maybe because they're rising stars, they're super busy and they're like, we're
heads down.
Do we need to go? We're heads down right now. So
I've reached out in the past and done events, and when founders are like that, I'm like, come on, man, have a little bit of fun. If you're gonna say yes, this is the one to say yes to, but they're like, no, heads down, focus. Especially the YC founders. I feel YC is just this militant, you should just be coding and growth and don't talk to anybody.
You've got to have some time, step out and see what the competition are doing. Speak to your peers, learn. It's good. It's therapeutic. It's for the first 2 years, of running SaaStock, I didn't have a vacation. I was kind of heads down, but it wasn't because we were the the next sort of, big thing, but it was more out of, survival, right? And you just got to, got to keep the lights on and make it work. And then after that, I felt like, well, I probably can have a holiday now, but I was in bad shape in terms of I was knackered. I felt too guilty to go to the gym, right? And I just had like 2 young kids as well in the first 2 years.
They would have been right around that same time, right?
Absolutely.
They're 3 and 4?
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. So I had those, and I put on a ton of weight.
What a time to start a company. Right?
I know.
Have babies.
But exactly. There was, Gemma, my partner, she said, when I said to her, look, I'm going to quit my job, and that was the only income that we had in the household, at the time. And it's we're going to go full time on SaaStock. She's, can you wait? Can you wait wait 2 years? She said. I was like, well, if I'm going to wait 2 years, somebody else is going to do it, and I'm not going to want to do it in 2 years' time, right? Because I'll probably, be thinking of something else.
Yeah.
So it had to be kind of now or never, and thank God I did it. So I guess maybe there is a good time, and that was the best time, even though I had kids on the way, and a little painful. But that gives you that focus, that drive. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We're on the streets. Right? But
that's motivation.
Yeah.
Alex, you've obviously started to build the team, 20 plus people. As we wrap up, I love asking the question, founders of founders, who have you had to become to lead this kind of company? And just personally, what's been your journey? What are some of the skills, mindsets?
Yeah. Like, it's a big journey, like the first, I wouldn't necessarily say for like the first 2 years, I was like a leader. I found it sort of like difficult. I was really good at the sales thing, so I would just kind of focus on the sales thing, and it's like, okay, well, you do the marketing, you do this kind of thing, right? And like when the team was 3 people, when it's 7 people, you don't have to do those weekly all hands or the coaching and this sort of thing, and that wasn't necessarily my arsenal like at the time. Now, very much more so, I'm trying to be, a mentor, a coach, on a weekly basis, doing, one-to-ones and, like performance reviews, this sort of thing, and kind of trying to learn that. Still, got I think, a long way to go, but getting much better at being, I think, a boss and a leader of the company, and again, the visionary. Right now, the position where you're the storyteller, right? You've got to be, that's got to be in your kit bag as well. I think I've probably always had as
a salesperson,
I've always had that.
Yeah.
It's just becoming a bit more kind of refined, right? And so having that kind of vision, the clear vision, and so everybody knows what the vision is, and they work, towards that within the business. So like much more like this year, the last sort of 2 years, been focused around being a better kind of leader, being a better manager. So, reading like a whole ton of, business books, and to try and sort of understand not only how to build like a great company and a great team, and just how to be a better boss. And I think one thing actually I still haven't done, and I'm saying post SaaStock 19, is be like getting an executive coach, right? And get a mentor, because still like 4 years down the line, like I'm trying to be a mentor and stuff like to my team, but I don't actually have one, and I don't know, who that person would be. That's because, again, I think it makes sense. Somebody that has done a conference business, somebody that's been in events, right? A Joe Paluzzi type thing. If you're listening,
Joe, you want
Joe,
a mentee,
but like having somebody kind of like that that's been there, done that would be I think pretty helpful for me.
What would you expect from that person? Like, what do you expect you would learn, or kind of what areas would they challenge you or bring clarity to?
Yeah, again, a good question. So, I mean, some of the things that I'd like to learn, again, because funnily enough, like I get people who are just starting out in the conference business that kind of reach out to me and ask a lot of advice, and I'm always kind of happy to kind of give up my time sort of within reason and speak to them. So again, maybe somebody that has built, I think an events company that maybe like 50 to 100 sort of people, that it's a global business. I think some of the main challenges are as you're going global, like the different markets and understand how to go to market within those different regions. So there are only a few really kind of big conferences sort of out there that that have either exited or are kind of still running, where actually they can give us a lot of advice still, because again a lot of learnings this year going international. But yeah, just again, if they also have that skill set, it might be different coaches, right? Somebody might be able to say, here's how you build a international events business. And then here's somebody who can say, well, here's how you just be a better leader, right? Yeah. So it could be two different people and therapists and whatnot, right?
Yeah, just somebody to listen to.
Yeah, exactly. So all of that could probably be pretty beneficial.
That's cool, man. I appreciate you saying that. Obviously self-serving, but where do people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter. I'm more probably active on LinkedIn. Alex Theuma.
LinkedIn has been slowly just taking more and more of my time. It is interesting.
Yeah. I think it's been like pretty good for us, and the Twitter account is growing at Alex Theuma a little bit, but I'm not the best on that.
And the podcast, people got to listen to the
podcast. The SaaS Revolution Show podcast, been going 4 years now. We're going to do some new things, I think, on that in 2020, but that's going great. And find us at SaaStock.com. Come there, check it out, and hopefully come to the Dublin one or next year. Awesome. Next year in Latin America, Asia, US, Australia.
Dude, Alex,
all around.
I really appreciate you, man.
Thanks
so much for everything.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching this episode of Escape Velocity. Be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment with your biggest insight from our conversation. Be sure to check out the next episode.